Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from on this beautiful planet of ours. Hello and welcome. We're super excited to have you here. Please kindly drop your full name, your organization, and your favorite food in the chat. And let us also know where you are joining us from. We really would love to get to know you better. Thank you for being here. Kindly use the chat function and introduce yourself.
Oh, we have something from Funmi Adeniyi. She's joining us from Cape Town, South Africa, and her favorite food is fried rice. Oh my goodness. Let's keep them coming. We have Opeyemi joining us from Nigeria, Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa. Opeyemi, what is your favorite food?
Hello, Ayana from the UK. Thank you for being here. Let us know your favorite food and the organization you represent. Thank you. We have Christy Asala. She's joining us from the UK and she loves salad in all varieties. Ooh, yummy.
Yes, Opeyemi is son after my own heart, pounded yam and efori raw. We also have Micah Olad joining from beautiful island of Sri Lanka, chief of party with Save the Children. Ghana Jollof is my favorite. Awesome.
All right, we have Charles. Charles is joining us. He works with the Cognito Project and he also loves pounded yam and egusi with orishi rishi. Nice. We have Kim. Kim is joining us from Abuja and he loves plantain. Interesting.
Yep, very interesting. We have Rashidat Mamadu joining us from Yola, Adamawa State, Nigeria. Achieving Health Initiative. Her favorite food is fried plantain. Nice. Keep them coming, please. Your name, your organization, where you're joining us from, and your favorite food. Thank you, Kasina.
Okay, so Andy told us what his favorite food is. While we're waiting for more comments, my favorite food, and thankfully I ate it yesterday and this morning, yam and egg sauce. So please drop your comments, drop your comments. We have amazing people joining us from all over the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Kindly drop your full name, your organization, your favorite food, and where you're joining us from. Drop it in the chat section. Thank you.
Oh, we have this from Dr. Bowie from ICHD, joining from Lagos. Her best food is amala with begiri, ewedu, and assorted. And then we also have from Francis, University of Ibadan, Nigeria, pounded yam and egusi.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. We have an interesting update from Ayana Dean. Her favorite food is fruits from the Caribbean and South America and roti and dal. What a lovely spread. Thank you for sharing. I also have the pleasure to welcome Oluchi Basi. She works with World Health Organization and she's joining all the way from Massachusetts. Thank you so much, Oluchi, for being here. Her favorite food is fried rice, fresh fish, and a healthy mix of salad. Nice. Welcome.
And we have Jeremiah from Bauchi. He says Danwake is his favorite food. Masa and kunungeda. Amazing. Awesome. So please keep them coming in. Your full name, organization, favorite food, and where you're joining us from. Okay, we have Ikran Kahin from University of Westminster, London. His favorite food or her favorite food is lasagna. Interesting. Kim, do we have that video ready? If it's not, then let's
Yes, we
move
do.
on.
So
Okay.
we do.
Okay. All right. You can go ahead, please.
All right.
It's a universal principle of life, a fundamental human right. Everyone should have access to enough, nutritious, diverse, affordable, and safe foods. It starts with nature, a journey from our farms to our tables, where we come together to celebrate our cultural identities. World Food Day. Food is a right, every day, for everyone, everywhere.
Yes, World Food Day. That is what we are commemorating.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you very much for sharing that video. And again, I say hello and welcome. We are really excited to have you today, and we welcome you to this webinar commemorating World Food Day 2024. It's wonderful to see you all. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kaseina Dashe, and I'm joined here today by the awesome Andy Ochubaye. We are food justice champions, and we work for the Cognito Project.
Thank you, Kasena. Thank you for the warm welcome, and welcome to everyone. I am excited to be here, as I'm sure you are, as we begin this webinar, which aligns with this year's theme for the World Food Day, Right to Foods for a Better Life and a Better Future. And the right to food is a big deal, especially with the reality of the food crisis all over the world. And I think before we start, Kasena, can I just run through a few housekeeping rules for everyone that is just joining in? First of all, the session is being recorded and will be shared with attendees. And as is a good practice, kindly keep your audio muted unless you are a speaker or you've been asked to unmute. Feel free to use the question and answer box for questions to the speakers, while you can use the chat for comments and contributions as the conversations proceed. And feel free to use your raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen to ask questions during open discussions. If you have any technical issues, use the chat to message our tech support team, and somebody would see how it can be resolved. And of course, as always, be respectful and avoid inappropriate language in the chat. Kindly stay with us till the end of the webinar for important announcements. Thank you. Over to you, Kasena.
All right. So Andy made a very interesting point. The right to food is a big deal, and we deal with the reality of food crisis experienced all around the world. This is why the Cognito Project has teamed up with the International Center for Environmental Health and Development and a wide variety of incredible experts and partners to organize this webinar, which is titled Food Justice, Taking Action for Diversified, Safe, Affordable, and Accessible Food in Africa.
Yes. So what do we know about food? I know that's a vague question, but I think we can play a quick game. What do you think, Asena?
Oh, most definitely. Let's
Okay.
play.
Let's call it a yay or a nay game, and it's quite simple to play. I'll ask you a series of questions, and you'll be required to use your reaction buttons or the chat function to indicate yay for a thumbs up, nay for a thumbs down, which means yes or no. So how about that? Are we ready? Can I see some reactions? Chat box, anywhere, are we ready? Awesome. I see them. Okay. Question number one. Over 2.8 billion people can afford a healthy diet globally. Yay or nay? If you said nay, then you are correct. 2.8 billion people in the world cannot access a healthy diet. Question number 2. Nearly 733 million people face hunger worldwide. Yay or nay? Yep, I see the yays. The yays have it.
Now, this is an interesting one. Climate change is a leading cause of food insecurity. What do you think? Is it a yay or is it a nay? Oh, yeah. The yays have it. Please keep your fingers coming. Keep your finger at thumbs up or thumbs down coming in. Use the reaction button. It's just at the bottom of your screen. It has react in front of it. Once you click it, you'll find options there for your yay or nay. Now, this is for me and my women folk. Women make up a small portion of the agricultural labor force in developing countries. Is that a yay? Is that a nay? That is definitely a nay. Women make up a huge portion, not a small, extremely significant portion of the agric labor force.
Thank you, Kasena. Okay, we have food loss and waste affects more than 1 billion people annually. Is that a yay or a nay?
Socio-economic digital divide. So gender now.
Should I take it again? I see very few responses. Food loss and waste affects more than 1 billion people annually. Yay or nay? Yes, the yays have it. Next question. Empowering women in agriculture has little or no effect on food security. Yay or nay? Aha, you got it. The nays have it. All right, over to you, Kasena.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I see that some people are just joining us. Hello and welcome. If you are just coming in, please introduce yourself in the chat function, your name, your organization, your favorite food, and where you are joining us from. We're currently playing the game yay or nay. If you agree with the statement being read, thumbs up using an emoji, and if you disagree, thumbs down using an emoji. So the next point, more than 820 million people globally suffer from chronic undernourishment. Is that a yay? Is that a nay? I see a lot of yays. And indeed, the yays have it. The next is approximately 149 million people, children specifically, under the age of 5. 149 million children under the age of 5 are stunted due to malnutrition. Is that a yay? Is that a nay? Yes, indeed, it is a yay. Over to you, Andy.
All right, moving forward, around 3 million people each year die from foodborne diseases. Is that a yay or a nay? Awesome, awesome. The yays have it. Next, more than 1.3 billion people lack access to electricity, impacting food storage and preparation. Is that a yay or a nay? Ah, yes, I see the yays. All right, over to you, Kasena.
Now, the next point is less than 70% of the world's poor live in rural areas where food insecurity is more prevalent. Is that a yay? Is that a nay? If you said nay, you are correct. Over to you, Andy.
And the last but not the least on this, food insecurity is less prevalent in low-income countries compared to high-income countries. Is that a yay or a nay? Yes. If you said a nay, you are correct. Food insecurity is actually more prevalent in low-income countries compared to high-income countries. All right. Thank you so much. A round of applause for you. Over to you, Kasena.
That was exciting.
Yep, it was.
Um, oh, yes. If you could quickly in the comments, can you share which statement or data shocked you the most? There were quite some interesting things. For me, the fact that 146 million children suffer undernourishment, that is shocking to me. So tell us what shocked you the most. And while we do that, I would like to also welcome those of us who are just joining the meeting. Hello and welcome to this World Food Day commemoration organized by the Cognito Project and the International Center for
Environmental health and development.
Oh, yes. Thank you for helping me. All right. I have the distinct pleasure now of introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Funmi Adeniyi. And I would like, while she's getting ready, to tell you who Dr. Funmi is. I'm very pleased to share that Dr. Funmi Adeniyi is a lawyer with a PhD in law, specializing in human rights protection. She is a senior development leader with over 10 years of expertise in program design, research implementation, capacity building, and training, particularly in climate justice, agri-food systems, and people-centered advocacy across Africa. Her professional focus spans climate change, advocacy, policy influencing, international development, and gender, disability, and social inclusion. Her commitment to gender justice and social inclusion is the bane of the work she does. So we really look forward to hearing all the amazing things she has to share with us today. Over to you, Dr. Funmi Adeniyi, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much, Kasena and Ochubaye, for that very interesting start to today's session. And thank you to the organizers for inviting me, but thank you to everyone who has taken the time to be here and to engage with this event today. I trust that it will be worth all our while, given the very impressive speakers we all have here today. So from wherever you're joining us, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. There's a popular saying in my culture that to go forward, we must look back. This very simple yet profound truth reminds us that the lessons of our past guides our steps into the future. My own passion for food and influencing food systems is rooted in nostalgic memories of my childhood. I often like to describe my childhood as growing up on trees. I was a young girl high up in one of the many fruit trees behind our home every single day, munching on fresh fruits directly from the tree. That experience was driven by more than just the desire for the delicious. It filled me with something crucial that I believe is sorely missing in our food systems today: freedom. Freedom to climb to the next tree, to decide which fruit I wanted, to satisfy my hunger on my own terms. And perhaps this sense of freedom best captures what food rights and food sovereignty should truly mean today. Not just the right to have food, but the freedom to determine what one eats, how it's grown, and how it's accessed. I want to begin today's conversation with a crucial question to everyone on this platform today. Where is that freedom now? And without that freedom, can we truly say that we've secured the right to food for all? Today, we live in what many scholars describe as a state of polycrisis, a world facing multiple crises and challenges all at the same time, all at once. Climate change and its devastating events, rising levels of pollution, the increasing burden of non-communicable diseases, like we saw with the last and also communicable diseases like we saw with COVID-19, conflicts and insecurities, one economic downturn after the other with the corresponding inflation. All these crises have one thing in common. They impact food and people's access to it. They affect people's freedom to choose what to eat and their ability to nourish themselves and their families. The challenges we face today have left us with a food system that is fundamentally broken, especially in Africa. The stark reality is that our food system has been captured by powerful corporate interests, leading to a loss of land, a loss of seed, and a loss of our food sovereignty. The overdependence that we now see on large profit-driven corporations has not only eroded local food systems, but has also stifled the autonomy of small-scale farmers and communities who once had the freedom to grow, to exchange, and the freedom to consume diverse, nutritious foods. We now see the devastating impacts of this broken system manifesting in multiple forms. Food inflation rates that boggle the mind and create added barriers to food access. I mean, how many of us now can no longer make a list for certain and take it into shops or supermarkets because the prices of food changes on a daily basis? Macro and micronutrient deficiencies, widespread child stunting, as we saw in the statistics, and alarmingly high levels of anemia amongst pregnant women who are unable to access even the most basic nutritious diets. It is unacceptable that in the 21st century, millions of people across Africa are still deprived of their right to food and nutrition security, with long-term consequences to health, to education, and to economic productivity. There has to be a turn. In the food justice movement, we often say food first. Because if we cannot guarantee the right to food, how can we begin to discuss other rights, even the fundamental right to life? It turns out that my childhood sense of freedom was more insightful than I realized, as I now reflect on Nelson Mandela's powerful words. A vote without food, shelter, and healthcare would be to create the appearance of equality, while actually inequality is entrenched. We do not want freedom without bread, nor do we want bread without freedom. While providing the rights associated with democracy, our constitution should also create the basis for an expanding flow of entitlements so as to accord every citizen that measure of dignity intrinsic to being human. The core principle of human rights is that they are bundled. They're indivisible, they're interdependent, and they are inalienable. One cannot be fully realized without the other. So if we do not address the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, we cannot address the right to food. If we do not tackle the right to safety and security of persons and of property, we cannot secure the right to food. They are inextricably linked. I've been asked to share insights today on the African food justice system, its challenges, its solutions, and its opportunities. Challenges are plain for us all to see. Our continent is hungry and undernourished, not because we do not produce enough food, far from it, but because access is limited by a multiplicity of factors, some of which I've already touched on, some of which other panelists will be touching on further. People either cannot afford healthy, nutritious food, or the food environment itself makes such food inaccessible. The latest FAO State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2024 report projects that by 2030, Africa will replace Asia as the region with the highest number of undernourished people in the world. This same report also tells us that food insecurity remains stubbornly unchanged across many regions, including Africa. This is a blazing red banner. We are not on track to meet SDG 2. Or if we're all being honest with ourselves in this virtual room today, any SDGs at all, then it's not all doom and gloom, so that I don't become the naysayer for today. There are remarkable agents of change across the continent, many of whom in the journey of my profession I have been privileged to work with and been thoroughly inspired by. Women, youth, small-scale farmers, activists, even the judiciary in some context holding the state to account. These are actors who work tirelessly to reverse this tide. If these efforts are to succeed and make a real dent in what seems like an overwhelming challenge, we must adopt a multi-pronged strategy. Let me briefly highlight 3 key pathways which we must take forward. 1, we must shift from siloed approaches to a systems-oriented approach to tackling food insecurity and malnourishment on the continent. Our interventions on climate action, health, and economic policy must be interlinked, working together to create a regenerative food system. For instance, how do our climate actions contribute to building a food system that sustains not only the environment, but also people? Our circular economy approach is helping to remove barriers of people accessing affordable and nutritious food. Food systems are complex, yes, I know, but they are not isolated from the broader systems of the environment, of health, and of economy. We need to break down the silos. Secondly, we need to scale up the good work that is already happening. Many communities are implementing effective, innovative, and locally led solutions. And quite frankly, I couldn't be more proud to be an African on the continent. But unless these efforts happen at scale and rapidly, they will not solve the fundamental problem of equitable access to nourishing food. The current architecture of financing for food systems in Africa is not fit for purpose. Public spending on agriculture is far too low. Food security and nutrition receives less than a quarter of official development assistance. If we do not bridge this financing gap, millions will remain food insecure and unable to afford healthy diets, with long-term socioeconomic and health consequences that are simply too costly for us to bear. Political will and action must drive this shift, not just will and action, not as a gesture of benevolence, but as a matter of state obligation. Private actors, development institutions, civil society organizations also have a critical role in rethinking their contributions to this broken system. You and I also do. Third, and finally, we must redefine what we mean by financing for food. The FAO has very recently put forth a new definition that I think we must all adopt. It says financing for food security and nutrition means ensuring that all people at all times have stable physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs. It's about ensuring that they have freedom to determine what they eat, along with access to health, water, sanitation, and adequate feeding and caregiving practices. This definition offers us a holistic vision of food security, one that recognizes food as a multifaceted right, which intersects with health, with livelihoods, and with dignity. As we navigate today's conversations, I leave you with one question. What will you do to ensure safe, diverse, affordable, and accessible food in Africa? For my part, I am committed to ensuring that my children and their children's children experience the same sense of freedom that I felt on top of those fruit trees in my childhood. Biting into fresh fruit, feeling that deep connection to the land and its bounty. This is the freedom we must fight for. This freedom is how we ensure that the right to food for a better life and a better future is guaranteed. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Funmi, for that wonderful keynote on the African food justice system. And since we are celebrating World Food Day, I will need everyone to drop an emoji in the chat, or just use your reaction button to appreciate Dr. Adeniyi for that wonderful keynote. Use a food emoji, please, if you find one. That would be awesome. One of the first things that she said that caught my attention is the concept of freedom. She says that the lessons of our past guide our steps into the future. I remember very vividly climbing a mango tree on a hot Sunday afternoon and getting a ripe mango. There's this joy that comes from biting into it and finishing and feeling that warm juice just splash into the back of your mouth. And it's such a beautiful experience. And she asked the question, where is that freedom now? And among the pathways that she mentioned, there are three that I'd just like to point out. The three pathways she mentioned, she said we need to shift from a siloed approach to a systems-oriented approach to tackling food insecurity and malnourishment. Second key point is to scale up the good work. Yes, there is work that is already being done. Like she said, we're not in line with the SDGs yet, but there's work being done by key players, and some of them are in the room today. Scale up that good work that is being done. And one of the drivers of this would be not just political will, but the action. And that is what we're looking at, taking action. What action are you going to take after this? And then the last pathway she mentioned is to redefine what we mean by financing for food. This was really, really what we needed to hear this morning. And at this point, I'll hand over to Kasaina and say again, thank you so much, Dr. Funmi, for that keynote. Over to you, Kasaina.
Oh, yes, Dr. Funmi, thank you very much. I'm sure you took a lot of us down memory lane, talking about climbing trees and eating fresh fruits. That was such a beautiful memory to revisit today. And thank you for sharing your expertise and your very rich insights with us. Please keep the appreciations coming in the chat function, and you can also use your emojis to still appreciate Dr. Adeniyi. Thank you again. In the course of the meeting, a few more people joined us just to say hello to Irene Osaibobo from Annie, joining from Abuja. Rosemary Adejo Adaji, thank you for being here. Kabran Inya Neyako. Pardon me if I didn't get that right. Hello and welcome, Pharmacist Boliat Awai from FMC Abuja, thank you. Olorundare Abiodun Philip, thank you very much for being here. Dr. Ernest Ogezi, thank you for being here. Agatha Chinedu, Olajide Funsho Benjamin, we see you, we appreciate you. Chukwanu Okoli, thank you very much for being here and supporting what we do. And Hanatu Dashe, thank you for being here as well. All right, so moving on, it's time for that session we have been waiting for, the panel session. And I'm very happy to introduce our distinguished panelists who will be engaging on the topic, food justice, taking action for diversified, safe, affordable, and accessible food in Africa. First on my list of speakers, I have Dr. Omotayo Francis Fagule. He is a global health expert with specialized training in community dentistry, public health, and tobacco control. He is passionate about improving the health of underserved populations in Nigeria and across Africa. His work focuses on reducing health disparities through research on healthy lifestyles and diet, oral health, and behavior change interventions. Dr. Fagule has been actively involved in public health research, education, and advocacy, contributing to policy discussions on food justice and its impact on health equity. Over to you, Andy.
Next, we have Ayana Dean. She's a global public health and human nutritionist, skilled in health and nutrition policy planning, implementation and evaluation, program management, emergency response, and so much more. With over 15 years of experience at the National Health Service in the UK, Ayana also teaches courses such as nutrition in emergencies, food security, and nutrition intervention planning. She has managed the implementation of a COVID food security program reaching over 1 million families. Over to you, Kasena.
Next, we have Dr. Ndudi Bowe. She is a lawyer, an ecofeminist, gender, environmental, and climate justice advocate with core competence in gender and climate justice, legal services, women's health and human rights, capacity building, policy advocacy, and development program design. She currently serves as the deputy chair of the Africa Climate Justice Movement.
Yes, and then we have Micah Olad. He's a strategist, advocate, and change management expert and servant leader with competence in public health and nutrition, strategic organizational decision-making, and program implementation, among others. In his role with Save the Children US, he currently serves as Chief of Party USDA Food for Education and Child Nutrition Program, where he provides leadership and general oversight in this multi-million USDA-funded program in Sri Lanka. Welcome, Micah.
Fantastic. And to guide our panelists through this conversation, we have our very own, the Executive Director of the Cognito Project and the visionary, Christy Asala. Christiana Asala is an experienced advocate and communication professional with over 15 years in reproductive, maternal, adolescent, and child health, including nutrition and climate justice in Africa and in the UK. As Executive Director of Cognito, she directs operations and programs, leveraging her proven track record in advocacy and program strategy. She is passionate about nutrition, maternal, newborn, and child health, as well as climate change, and she leads initiatives focused on nutrition, self-care, elder care, disability rights, quality of care, and respectful maternal care in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy and Kasina. And thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. Funmi started by taking us down memory lane, and literally that speech was amazing. How many of you used to climb trees like us? Gosh, like, I don't know what they call it in English, but there's this tree they call Dorora tree. It was a very high, long tree. Oh my God, that was really amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Funmi. And so we're going to go straight into the panel. This year's World Food Day theme is Right to Food for a better life and a better future. And it spotlights the importance of diversity, nutrition, affordability, and accessibility, as well as the safety and sustainability of foods. It further emphasizes raising awareness and how, a greater diversity of nutritious food should be available in our fields. Now, there is, what we call right now the 21st century malnutrition, which is the triple burden of malnutrition. So looking at the undernutrition, micronutrient deficiency, and overnutrition. Now, although there are common factors, such as poverty, poor dietary choices, food, supply chain, inadequate malnutrition, some which Dr. Funmi has also mentioned, are in the changing food system that affects, the burden of malnutrition. But in a couple of researches, now there are families and people that are not even affected by these factors, but still suffer from malnutrition. And that takes us, down to the diversity, food diversity, and why this is important. In translate, I started reading a book called The Extinction, Eating to Extinction by Dan Saladino. And he said in that book that increasingly we are all eating the same food. He said of the 6,000 plant species humans have eaten over time, the world right now, eats rather grows and consumes only 9 of them. It's never been more important, for the survival of our plants and species to understand how food diversity, is important to our food. Diversity matters, for food security, our health, the planet's health, local economies, and our soil life, wildlife, insect life. And that's why we're right now even emphasizing on what we call One Health. And just to set the context, for today's discussion, I'm going to start with you, Francis. What do we mean by food diversity, and why is it so important in food security?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. First, I think to thank you, the organization, the Cognito Project, for inviting me to be part of this wonderful program. And greetings to everybody that is participating. I'm also hoping to learn from the conversation. But as you've asked, food diversity and then food security, I contribute to it. Permit me to provide the background information as to the way I understand this. Food diversity basically is talking about variety of foods that have been available. When we say variety of food, in terms of the types of food, for example, we talk about the grains, the fruits, vegetables, fats, and the like. So we have variety that will all come together to form a balanced and nutritious diet. But more than just that, food diversity is still talking about, even talking about grains. We know that we have different types of food products that also, that grains, talk about the wheat, the rice, the sorghum, and the like. So food diversity is basically talking about having the varieties of nutritious food, both locally and, of course, internationally, types of food in that regard. Now, what is food security? Food security is having access to physical access, social access, economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. I think the key points are: one, physical access to this food, social access, and economic access. But it's not only just going to be any type of food, it has to be nutritious food that meets dietary needs and food preferences of the people. Now, so how does food diversity then help us achieve food security? We've said for us to have food security, we need good nutrition, that is nutritious meal. When we have food diversity, like I mentioned, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the wheat, all these ones would help us provide a balanced diet and a nutritious diet. In the area of resilience against food shocks, because food insecurity, for example, a situation happened, in fact, we're still facing it, where you had the war in Ukraine. They are one of the biggest producers of wheat grains. Now, in countries where they don't have diverse options, other varied options that rely solely from Ukraine, for example, this is going to be a major hit for them. But if there's diversity in varieties in those countries, then even though they have issues in the type of wheat that is coming from Ukraine, they have other sources that can help them provide necessary security in that regard. Again, this is one of the ways in which food diversity is going to contribute to having food security. Again, it goes into also the economic stability. For example, when we are able to produce different types of food products, it means that people are engaged in this variety, other people are engaged in other variety, and we consume all these things. It helps in stabilizing the economy, and then it also attracts the economic gain for these people. So, to put it simply, it is quite obvious that for us to have safe, nutritious meal that also have the people have been talking about their choices. Somebody like mango, somebody like cashew, and the likes. Those are fruits. When we have variety, then we are able to get security. I think, from my own understanding, this is how food diversity then fits into food security. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that. I like the fact that you mentioned resilience, and that is what one of the things that food diversity tends to do. Moving to you, Aya Nadine, can you also just, brief overview of your thoughts on food diversity and why it is important in food security.
Thank you, Chrissy. I think I would kind of cage my discussion in the concept of school feeding, because that's my area of I'm passionate about and expertise at the moment. And as it regards to food diversity within school feeding or school nutrition programs, because we're trying to move away from school feeding and focus more on school nutrition because it's a much more holistic approach. It avoids it affords us an opportunity to ensure that children within school age have the variety of nutrients that's required for physical development. And in that, it has a direct impact on educational outcome, health and well-being, reducing hunger, malnutrition, inequality. So that is feeding into at least 3 or 4 sustainable development goals already. So food diversity, growing up, I was raised in South America, a beautiful country that's surrounded between Brazil and Venezuela. And I a country called Guyana. And I always thought that every school had a kitchen garden. Every school had a poultry farm. Every school had home economics, nutrition background. We all, we looked after the animals. We tended to the kitchen garden. We came back. We prepare meals. We share. We ate, and I thought that was the norm. And that for me is the epitome of whole. Sorry, someone's mic is giving me feedback. That's the epitome of whole food culture, and having being, first of all, it being available, being able to access it without any restraint and utilization, and being in a good state of health and able to observe, so it can benefit us. And I think as it pertained to food security, it's very much linked to the food system. That was echoed quite brilliantly by the first speaker. And it's linked to the food system. It's also linked to food sovereignty, which again, was already spoken about. But this ability where people can culturally appropriate foods at all times, and local farmers can have say in what they grow, how their food is sold, and just not having corporate capture where we drowned out the voice of indigenous people or people way of life. So yes, I all things when it comes to food security, food diversity, food equity, and food sovereignty. I think the 4 should sit nicely in one umbrella.
Thank you so much, Ayana. And I love that example you gave, showing food access, it's available, and how you basically interact with farming and basically from farm to place, which is really what we all aspire for. Ayana, going back to you, I know you've done quite a number of work around school food feeding, which is one strong component of food justice. I want you to give, practical example. I know Dr. Funmi had mentioned, the solutions, opportunities when it comes to food system. Give us example, of how this, has worked and how it can help enhance food security.
Well, I am going to, I guess the best way I can tackle that is focusing on school nutrition and program, and how that, like I've already mentioned, it provides a window of opportunity to feed nutritious food and in a safe environment, and it's fundamental for developing as you know, as children require essential nutrients at given time in their growth development. School food nutrition educational programs are now what we're seeing on the world stage is being called the most comprehensive nutrition intervention or safety net for children. And I think it provides a brilliant opportunity for us to tackle all the encompassing what we're talking about food security. We now have evidence from around the world. So no longer is it just merely a spectrum. In 2013, the Lancet journal posted an article saying that we should stop all food nutrition intervention because it's resources that is being, not giving us the return that we want. Now, last year, they printed an article saying that it's the most comprehensive safety net. And that is because we're seeing evidence from around the world, from Japan, Brazil, India, Europe, about the benefit of school nutrition program. It taps into sustainable development goals such as good health and well-being. It also taps into, which is SDG 2. It provides positive outcome as it regards to the ability to learning. We have the World Bank saying that for every £1 that is invested, the return is 1.72. And those of us who are in this field know that unfortunately, return on investment still drives the conversation of lots of nutrition insensitive program. So we're seeing support from the World Bank, and then also we're seeing that there is a direct link to children who receive nutritious food at school in terms of their learning outcome. Now, if you want to get the government to move, especially within the UK context, you have to be able to link these programs to nutritional outcome, school attainment. Children are getting better grades in reading and maths, and you also have to link it to return of investment. So we're seeing all of this that it is happening at the moment. There's also prioritizing school nutrition program. Good examples are, you have to keep it on the national agenda, making sure Brazil is doing fantastically well in allocating domestic budget towards school nutrition program. They have the second largest school nutrition program in the world. Campaigning, using our voice, such as this platform, discussing this, social media, and making sure you ignite the conversation within organization. Do I have time for 2 more examples? I'm mindful of not hogging, so if I don't, I can leave it there.
All right, thank you so much, and I was just about to say that your time was almost up. Thank you so much for those beautiful examples, of how school food feeding gives a comprehensive nutrition and safety net. So I'll be going to you, Micah Olad. I know you have worked across various countries, looking at food justice interventions. Can you share practical examples for us, that has worked in your experience? And I know you have also done some work in Ghana, and we know Ghana is probably one of the leading countries in Africa on school feeding programs. So it would be really nice to know what has worked and for us to also take from here as part of our action step.
Myself. Sorry, I was on mute while speaking. So thank you very much, Christy, and already presented panel members. I just want to really appreciate the significance of this meeting or webinar we are having. And as rightly put, food justice is something that I have very passionately been working over the last couple of years, almost 2 decades. And before I even respond or attempt responding to Christy's question, one outstanding or shocking thing that I have recently experienced in one of the countries that we work is hearing from a school principal how students used to collapse during morning assembly just because they didn't have food the previous night, and they didn't also have breakfast and coming to school. So if not for the interventions of our school meals, you can only imagine what will happen to these children that are significantly affected as a result of lack of food. Yeah, so with approaches that have really worked for Ghana and elsewhere, what I was particularly in Africa, what I'll say is the homegrown food approach. So the homegrown school meal approach has been something that Ghana adopted. And also whilst I was working in Sierra Leone, on the project I was working, what we did was, as part of the sustainability of that project, we worked hand in hand with the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health and Nutrition, to ensure that even after the closure of that project, the government of Sierra Leone will be able to grow their own food to feed school children. So what we did was kind of boosting that agriculture sector by form of training farmers, by form of providing them with the necessary tools and inputs that are needed, and in a more sustainable manner. So the homegrown school meal approach is one of the things that have really worked in countries. It comes with its own challenges, and it also comes with a challenge of the willingness of there's a crisis, or maybe in the developmental context. What they do, for example, is allocating a percentage of their funding to injecting it into the economy by what they call local regional procurement. So this local regional procurement is what, for example, if the project funding is 20 million, 10% of that is $2 million. And that $2 million has to be sourced. Food has to be sourced within the country. So if you are sourcing food within the country, it invariably means that you are boosting the economy, you are equipping farmers to produce more, and then also to see the reality on the ground in the need to extending or increasing their produce whilst they are able to meet the demands of the country. So that is one thing that also happens. Now to the specific answer to Ghana. Growing up in Ghana, what I used to also see some schools that were less privileged benefiting from school meal program, which was more donor driven. But since the government adapted this and driving it with its own resources, one thing that has really worked is first establishing the policy. If you do not have a framework on food justice or school meals, it's not going to work at the national level. So Ghana ensured that there was a school meal policy that governed all aspects of the school meals. And as a matter of fact, this policy was approved by the legislature, that's the Parliament House. And once that is approved, it's being invited by the government to allocate budget. So policy in place, budget allocation, and then systems and structures to run the school meal program. So that is something that has really worked well in Ghana, and it is now a government-led and driven school meal program across the length and breadth of the country. It comes with its own challenges, and one major challenge that has been from the grassroots is the delay in payment of the caterers who provide these nutritious meals to the school children. That is not only peculiar to Ghana, even with the context of Sri Lanka that are also running a government-led school meal program, which is also still being supported by the external resources. There is that delay element that we have been working constantly to resolving with the government. So that is one approach that has really also been working well as a matter of fact. The school meal secretariat does not sit on its own in Ghana. It is under a ministry. And so this also has that oversight and ministerial responsibility. And it sits under the Ministry of Children, Women, and social protection. So once it is the Secretariat sits under a ministry, there's that oversight and that responsibility of that ministry to ensure that things are being run. So basically, that is what I would add, unless maybe there's a specific question or there's a need for me to expand on some of the points that I have mentioned. Over.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that. I mean, I think I really do love the local regional procurements because it emphasizes sourcing food locally. And I think somebody asked a question that probably one of our major challenges that we're trying to urbanize our food as we urbanize our cities, and that we should probably go more and look inward, and we probably have all the diversity we need in every country. Thank you so much for sharing that. Please, if you do have any question, put it in the chat function, and we will make sure our speakers respond to that before we close. I mean, everybody knows I am a maternal health advocate. I mean, that's basically what I spend my time talking about. And we know the nutrition status of mothers and their children, may be one of the better ways to evaluate the well-being of a nation. That's because nutrition challenges can affect current and future generations. I mean, for example, anemia among women of reproductive age is one potentially debilitating condition impacting physical and neurocognitive capacity for mothers and their children. In 2019, anemia among women of reproductive age accounted for 50 million years of healthy life lost due to disability, making it the second leading cause of life lost due to disabilities. And I'm going to be posing my next question to Dr. Ndudi. I know you have done quite a number of work trying to create food accessibility to women, in Nigeria and Africa. And why is it an issue? Why is food accessibility, a huge issue? And most of our speakers have mentioned food accessibility. And how have your organization taken actions to increase accessibility to food, especially among women and children?
Thank you very much, Christy. I'm really delighted to be a part of this great conversation that is critical to sustainable development. Looking at the question you asked, access to food has been a consistent challenge in Africa for quite some time. And speaking from the field, it's a big problem where people don't have access to food whenever they want and how they want it, especially for mothers, women, like you mentioned, women who are still in the childbearing age, reproductive age, and for infants and young children. Because then you have a world where children who are supposed to grow with the best kind of food, nutritious food that they deserve to have, don't have access to that kind of food, and they're not growing well. And then you have issues with stunted growth. Currently, in some parts of Africa, you have children who are having stunted growth because of malnutrition and undernutrition. So that's why it's a big challenge. And this challenge is stemming from different factors. Speaking from the field, my field experience working with women, especially women, smallholder women farmers and mothers in the past years, one major key factor is post-harvest losses. When farmers harvest and they need to move the food produce from the point of harvest to the point of sale for suppliers or marketers or for the consumers to come and purchase them, they would have lost a lot of the food. Take, for instance, tomatoes. When they harvest tomatoes, they pack them basically in light cane baskets, and they are stacked together, pushed into a van, and driven to the sale points. But before it gets to the sale points, at least 25% of that food would have been lost. And you agree with me that whatever is available from what is lost would be minimal. And a farmer who has projections in terms of income from harvest would be tempted to hike prices. And then it becomes a challenge to be able to purchase food especially for the world's poorest populations in Africa. One other big challenge as a key factor to lack of access to food is the issue of storage facilities and infrastructure. Many women who are into farming lack storage facilities, they lack infrastructure. So store their food to transport them the way they should. We all know, some of us really know about the crates that they use in transporting tomatoes. When women have access to such, they have minimal losses from the harvest, and then they can get close to their financial projection in terms of what they expect to get from their produce. One other big challenge, which we all know across Africa and many nations, is issues of insecurity. Many farmers are driven out of the farmland, ancestral lands, where they are farming and they are displaced because of insurgencies. Many farmers are not interested in putting their life at risk just to get to the farm and do what they need to do to produce food. So with this, a lot of food shortages arises from harvest because very few of them who are in locations where it's secure can carry on with their farming engagements and produce the quantity of food that they expect to produce. Another thing is, which has been mentioned by some of the speakers, is climate change, causing a lot of droughts, lack of rainfall. The pattern of weather patterns is shifting drastically and affecting the environment. A lot of women farmers get on the farm and the land is dry. The soil is very dry, and they're wondering what can they do to improve the quality of the soil in order to have a good harvest. And where they lack access to mitigation measures, climate resilience approaches, especially with support, digging out indigenous methods to climate challenge, becoming climate resilient. These issues persist. So that's one of the huge factors. Another factor that I would like to briefly mention is poor attention to agriculture and poor agricultural budgeting. Someone asked, what does it really mean to finance food? It's also been mentioned here by someone that over 70% of the agricultural workforce across Africa are women in local rural communities. When women are not financed to do the work they are doing in terms of providing food, it becomes very difficult for us to access food easily. I liked the first speaker when she talked about climbing trees. I was one of those children growing up that I loved to climb trees. I was like a tomboy. Climb trees, pick whatever fruit I like in the neighborhood, and jump down before the owner of the tree gets to notice that we have plucked from the tree. I mean, you can't do that anymore, because economic trees are sacred right now. People put things around their economic crops, because food is becoming really, really scarce on a daily basis. And then we have problem with policy issues. The Nigerian food policy of 2016 that is looking at providing nutritious food at all levels, national, community, family level. By 2025, hasn't even been able to attain 10% of that expectation. 2025 is just around the corner. So we have problems with policy issues, apart from a few of the things that I just mentioned. And on our side as an organization, we've done a few things, working with women and also now incorporating young people, young women, into creating the enabling environment for them to get interested in agriculture. One of the things that we have been doing in the past 5, 6, 7 years is helping women mitigate the impact of climate change on their farming engagements. Women are learning how to make the soil nutritious. Where women don't have access to land, which is a big problem in parts of Africa, women are learning how to grow food learning the soilless technology and things like hydroponics. Hydroponics is the technology where you can plant on any little space you have, even if you don't have land, and then grow your crops vertically. Some people call it vertical farming or horizontal farming. So those are the kind of technology that we're using now to help women. We are also working with women to see how we can dig out those indigenous adaptation methods and then improve upon them to help women address the problems of climate change, and how to enable women have access to drought-resistant seedlings, and how to store the seedlings in terms of drought, because one other issue is flooding that sweeps away lots of farmland, sweeps away seedlings, and women don't know what to do about that. But now we have been bringing training to help women to address these issues. One other thing that we're doing is, our organization is a part of a movement called Africa Climate Justice Movement. We are trying to we'll be giving funding to over 45 women organizations across Africa. And 90% of these groups are working in agriculture and food production. So that's one thing that we have been doing to help women access finances that they need to improve and boost agricultural engagement and produce food for the teeming population in Africa. Another thing that we have been doing is engaging the government, especially here in Nigeria. We are currently working with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to review the gender policy on agriculture. The program started 2 weeks ago in Abuja, and we're going to be in Abuja in another 1 week, a few days' time, to have a policy engagement. Let's look at these documents because it relates specifically to smallholder women farmers. Why is it not working? Is it the issue of funding? Is it issue of implementation? What can we do to review and revise this document to make the policy more amenable to boosting agriculture and food production, especially for the large percentage of the agricultural workforce we have in Nigeria and Africa who are women? The other thing is working with schools. We are beginning to work with schools to see how there can be farmlands, growing gardens in school environments, which can be the basis for starting a school feeding program for children in schools. Someone mentioned about, I think it was the last speaker also, talked about how children faint in school or in classes when they don't have access to food or enough nutritious food. I think this will go a long way to help our growing children in school when this farming activities are done in schools. It's one thing that anyone can actually engage in and help provide nutrition for children in schools. Thank you very much, Christy, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndudi. I mean, there's a lot to unpack from what you said, from issues of climate change to poor attention to agriculture, to insecurity and policy issues. And I think I love how, even with all of those challenges, you've been able to find a way to navigate around them while, trying to increase access for women. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's talk food affordability. In Africa, the average budget for per person per day to be able to have 3 meals is $30, supposedly. And for a country like Nigeria, we have more than 82 million people living less than $1 a day. So which poses, a big issue already. I remember doing a research in northern Nigeria, and we were, asking them, about their food choices and all. And most people said, "Auntie, we dey hungry. This are not be matter of eating nutritious. Now waiting we see we dey eat." So it's really right now just what can we eat than having to even think about if what they're eating is nutritious. So back to you, Francis. We know food affordability is probably one of the biggest challenges right now we're having in Africa. Some food items are even between 200 to 300% increase, over the past years. And are there any actions we can take to make our food more affordable?
Thank you very much. I think everybody has said it. I think food insecurity is a big challenge in Nigeria. We said security is about one of it is economic access. The prices of food have skyrocketed, and it's a major challenge. But I think to answer this question, I'd like to look at it let's start from what are the challenges that we are having now, that if the government, Nigerian government, and the people in the country are able to somehow can help us increase the availability. or even the variety of the foods. And if you have a lot more food available, I believe that that should have an effect on the prices and it becomes a lot more affordable. First is the issue of security. Security is a major problem. So what do I mean by insecurity? We know it's all over the news. People, other farmer crisis happening almost everywhere across the country. This has been a major reason for the significant reduction in the quantity of food materials that we have from our farms. So a lot of farmers, or even intending farmers, are no more farming in the country, and that has resulted in a lot of scarcity. And I give an example. Even my friend, a surgeon, at the time said, "Oh, I want to go into farming. Let's have something, at least as a consultant, we have the opportunity of doing that on the side." And he got the farmland, got the needed tractors and the likes. And within 1 year, the other farmer crisis occurred, lost almost everything, said he lost a lot of money, and I'm sure he's still recovering from it. In fact, currently out of the country, because of the outbreak that happened as a result of that. Now imagine if that was successful. You're probably still going to be in the country and doing well, contributing to the quantity of the food that we need. So I think security is a major challenge that the government and people really need to sort out. The other part is, one thing I've also noticed is the wastage. There's a lot of perishable goods, crops that are being produced in those areas that many times you don't have access. There's poor road access to those farms. And then even before they can get them out into the city, most of these are already perished. They are already spoiled. I think it's important to be able to provide good access to those places so that as people get the crops, as they get the products, they are able to transport and get them across the nation, particularly where they are needed. But more than just that, it's also abilities to store. Many of these farmers don't have the ability to get the very advanced equipment for storage. This is an area that the government can come into play and help them store. You find out that there are times where maybe palm oil is so cheap in the country around a certain period of time. And then at a particular period, the prices will have increased even 4 times. If they are able to preserve this over the year, throughout the year, then these issues are not going to happen. The other one is, you see, it is good to help farmers, give them fertilizers to produce. Again, this happened, I think, during the Obasanjo administration some years ago, several years ago, whereby they said, "Oh, we are going to give you the fertilizer, encourage you to farm." Now, the farmers went on into the farm, they produced all these products, only to find out that buyers are not available. And then the prices of those products crashed significantly. Because of that, the next year, people were not farming again. So it means that it is not only just encouraging or assisting farmers to produce, the government or the other stakeholders must also get the wherewithal to get those materials or those food materials from them. That is, the buyers should be there. Imagine if there is a national food feeding program. Let's even talk about that. You imagine the number of the quantity of food products that are going to be needed to do that. So if you're encouraging farmers, they also have a place in which they can get these things to talk about. But one thing that I also notice is, even when the government helps farmers, give them things for them to produce, next thing, at least for Nigerian situation, they then form themselves into unions and start determining prices. So even now, the crops are lost, the food, you want to believe that when there's a lot of supply, at least the prices should be able to go down. But what you have is people, they now start fixing prices. You must not sell below this. You must not sell below this. And then even though they've gotten tax exempt or whatever from the government, they want to just get as much profit as possible. The government also needs to look into this to break any form of monopoly that may be able to happen in that. Another is talking about expansion. You see, a lot of people are ready to farm, but they don't have the ability to get those mechanized farming, those equipment. If it's possible for the government to get this available to them, but even without talking about government, even farmers themselves can come together and then, like a cooperative, let's get this equipment, and they know how to then probably loan it around and use it to be able to expand. I feel that if we can get into all of this, we are going to likely have a lot more diversified and increased food production in the country, such that the variety we're talking about, food diversification, is going to be there. And hopefully that is also going to definitely help in the price reduction. You see, in terms of food diversification, I feel the government needs to also be intentional about it. We know that there are some places in the north that there are some type of crops that do very well there. There are places in the south, there's type of crops that do very well there. If the government is intentional about encouraging massive production in those areas, storage and then distribution across the country, you'll find out that there's going to be significant improvement in this issue in our country. There's a lot more to talk on this, but we have a short time, and I think this will just be my contribution on that for that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Francis. I mean, you have mentioned quite a number of things on food affordability, insecurity, wastage. We should also consider how to improve storage system, monopoly of pricing. Farmers should also be able to form good partnership to be able to secure equipment, and of course, government intentionality to ensure food, is diverse across the country. Thank you so much for all of that, Francis. I am, right now, because of the time, fact our time is well spent, and but before we finish this panel, I want to give all the speakers an opportunity to let us know in 1 minute, what are the opportunities that exist in Africa to increase food diversity, access, affordability, and safety? And please feel free to talk about any of the aspects you feel more passionate about. But in 1 minute, just help us summarize what are the opportunities that exist in Africa. We think this is really something we want everybody to take home today. So I will start with you, Ayana.
Hi. I think number one, especially when it comes to school children, increase food diversity via access of adapting a holistic school meal program. You can do that by looking at World Food Program. We've now got the amazing School Meal Coalition and other incentive. And I'm very much on the business of creating your own opportunities, looking for funding that is available, but funding that would allow country to implement nutrition incentive program free from in a way that is culturally acceptable within the local context, and for regions to be aware of corporate capture. What I mean is that when we accept sometimes money from donors, it comes with certain conditions that kind of have adverse effect to that in which we're trying to promote that it is a part of our ethos. And don't be afraid to question the solutions. Not because you're told that this works means it's something you should adopt. I would like to see the continent of Africa free from donor, and government taking responsibilities and prioritizing their citizens and making sure that their population is well fed, because it's a cornerstone to everything. Better economy, better future, stronger workforce. It's a no-brainer, in my humble opinion.
Thank you so much, Ayana, for that. Okay, let's go back to you, Micah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, a lot to say regarding food safety and diversity. When we talk about diversity, as Dr. Francis Omotayo rightly explained, one of the things I would want us to really do within the context of Africa is how to really promote the creation of new recipes using locally available ingredients. When I was working in Ghana, this was one of the most successful interventions we did with the projects that we managed. So how do we look around the villages, the communities we have, to use existing commodities to prepare food that is one very simple, low-costed way to diversify. We need to also teach our mothers or people, everyone, I would say, how do they even prepare this food? There's a lot of food demonstration activities that community members love to do. So let's give them that platform to conduct food demonstrations together with local government. It could be the nutrition department, the catering unit of an institution to support local women to demonstrate on how to even prepare, preserve, and keep food safe. Post-harvest losses are now becoming a thing that we have to really look at. And I like the fact that Madame Bowe mentioned that food wastage. How are we ensuring that we are preserving the food right after harvest? I mean, in Ghana, when it's mango season or avocado season, it's there for about 3 months. But what happens after the 3 months? How can we ensure that it is there all throughout the year? That is very common here in Asia. We get food, whether in or out of season, in the right quantity. So how can we do that also in the context of Africa? So this is one thing that we need to take notice of. And one key and important, in fact, last point I would want to mention when it comes to food safety is about strengthening government systems. Those systems used to exist. We used to have in Ghana what we call sama. They are called, like, they are the environmental health officers. Here in Sri Lanka, we call them the public health inspectors, and they support us to monitor the school kitchens we have and the caterers we have cooking for our school children. How do we empower them with existing acts and policies to kind of monitor and making sure people who are providing food are adhering to minimum and basic standards, to ensuring that food poisoning is not happening, to ensuring that providing food is not leading to, long-term consequences and chronic conditions. So these are all things that we should consider moving forward and looking into the future. Thank you. Over.
Thank you so much, Micah. I mean, you are speaking my language when you said we should create new recipes with locally adaptable produce. I mean, I was almost going to scream, amen there. But thank you so much. Also on the strengthened government system, I think that is so important, having an accountability system to be able to, hold people to account to what the government policies are saying. Let's quickly hear from you, Dr. Ndudi, and then Francis.
Thank you, Christy. Taking a cue from the last thing you said, which was something the last speaker talked about, creating new recipes and to adapt them to our local produce. I would also want to add to that by saying farmers should be encouraged to diversify in crop planting and not just stick to just one or two crops, to create a variety of food, create a lot of crop diversification that will give us access to different kinds of food that we can actually create recipes from, and then adapt it to our local produce. Secondly, I also like to talk about that it's time for us to begin to teach our women how to produce healthy crops by learning how to produce organic compost to make their soil more nutritious from food waste that's just right in their kitchen and around, and creating organic pesticides for the pest infestation in their farm. And thirdly, teaching women about local irrigation and water management system to help with the drought problems that we have. And then finally, policy advocacy, which is very important. We have a lot of policies on agriculture, but are not implemented at all. So we need to improve our advocacy on that, engage more policymakers, review more policies, and see how we can make them more functional, to aid food production and to support access to food. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Francis. Okay, looks like we've lost Francis. Our time, we're actually over the time, and I just want to quickly create your indulgence. We have a couple of questions that have already been posted in the chats function. Please, for those that are able and to stay, we would really appreciate if you can give us about 15 more minutes just to answer, to make sure we are able to respond to some of the questions and conclude. If you're able to stay, and if you can't, we really do appreciate you joining us today. Okay, I'm not sure we'll be able to take all of the questions. Cass, can you help me? I'm trying to track. So I will start from the very first question, which is from Victor. Victor is asking, how can we define a nutritious food? Let me quickly pose that question to Ayana. If you can, just help us answer very briefly because of time.
How can you define a nutritious food?
Yes.
I think there's no one food that could be defined as okay. It's all about variety because different food provide different nutrients in different format and in different amount that works, in terms of bioavailability. I know there are some food within the region that has probably more protein or more iron or more multivitamin, etc. So it really depends on what the requirement is and the need is. But I think you would look at a food and see what it provides in terms of the nutrient content. And that's the way you can define, well, this food is nutritious. But I'm very skeptical to go down the road to say one food is probably more superior than the other. It's all about variety. But if for example, if you have someone who is iron deficient, you might want to look at implementing things like moringa, which I know is locally available. So it's really the end result, what you're trying to look for. You can probably assign a definition to a food that is nutritious.
Thank you so much, Ayana. Again, because of time, we won't be able to dwell so much on the questions, but we will try to respond to them and send them back, as part of the minutes of today's meeting. I will take the second question, which is from Kabrang. I hope I got that correctly. Talking about food justice, the issue trending is the cost of food. Where I am, and perhaps world over today, well, for reasons we started saying, but can a national food subsidy program be a possibility to reduce cost and increase access? Micah, would you want to take that?
Take it again. I think I missed that part. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take that again. I'm talking about food justice. The issue trending is the cost of food. Where I am, and perhaps world over, can a national food subsidy program be a possibility to reduce costs and increase access?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Increasing cost or the increased cost of food. We might want to dig into what kind of food has an increased cost. The trend also shows that we are moving away from our own indigenous foods, which invariably leads us as a continent to going in for more processed food and more, food from various franchises. And these foods are known to be very expensive. So that is a trend that we're looking at, talking about. I don't want to mention brand name, but we all know that that is the trajectory of food consumption we have, especially from the middle, lower class upwards. We are not kind of consuming locally available food. So one thing that systems or government can only do is subsidizing the production of food, which I think that some governments are doing it. Francis mentioned about what Nigeria did. Ghana, there was a lot of advocacy on subsidizing agriculture inputs, talking about fertilizer and mechanized farming, and also government even buying these products because they know that once the harvest is done, consumption will not be immediately. Farmers will need their money, so government used to also equally buy and then resell onto the market. So there's no straight answer to saying that can foods be subsidized on the local market, but rather I would want us to look more into how do we encourage the consumption of local foods. And we all know foods that are grown and produced and kind of sold within the community are not expensive, if I should put it that way. So that is the direction I would probably respond to that question. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that response, Olad. Again, yes, you spoke my language. We need to increase consumption of local food. Okay, so I'll take second to the last question. I am a novice in food security. This is from Funsho Olajide. Financing and diversity. Can any of the panelists brief me of the intersectionality of food diversity, security, and disability? Also, is there any policy in Nigeria around food diversity? If yes, does it provide any deliberate or intentional inclusive guideline for people with disability, looking at our special needs? Who would want to respond to that? I think it's a lovely question.
Okay, I think I can talk about the relation between the food diversity and then food security. I think I mentioned that actually when we started to say food security is when there is the availability of safe, nutritious meal, actually, and then a variety, actually. Now, food diversity is when you have the different varieties of food that are nutritious and available. So it means that if you have varieties available and then you have access to those things, then there is food security, just to make it simply and consider the time. Now, when you talk about disability, well, depending on the type of disability, it may also then put the person in a situation of vulnerability, right? So it means we need particular attention needs to be paid to people who have that kind of challenges because they are at greater risk of food insecurity. So trying to put that together, we are saying when you have varieties of food available and people are able to get access to those foods, then they are going to have security, whether they are physically challenged or they are not. Regarding the issue of policies around food, yes, I know that we have some policies about production of food availability, but to my own knowledge, I'm sure people have better understanding of this. The major challenge oftentimes is the implementation of these policies in the country. So they may be there in the letter, but how much are we able to implement this in the country? That leaves a lot to be there's a lot of gap there, putting it that way. And I think one thing I want to also mention, particularly for my country, Nigeria, is the area of corruption. Many times you have some of these programs set out, but those who are expected to benefit from it are not able to benefit because of a lot of corruption that is along that chain. And this is not just talking about government. Even individuals, instead of giving it to people who need these facilities, the challenge, they rather take it to their family members. These are some of the issues that are challenges. I feel I'm able to clear up one or two. Others can also add to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis, and I hope that question has been answered. So last question we can take. I'm so sorry for every other person that posed a question. Apart from food shortages threatening some countries, including Nigeria, a major threat to food security and well-being of consumers is the flooding of our markets with GMO and other chemicalized foods. What can we do to make our food fit for consumption? I will pose this question to you, Dr. Funmi.
Thank you very much, Christy, and thank you to, I think it was Irene who asked that question. At the end of the day, there are those who argue for and who argue against GMO foods. without necessarily saying where I stand about it, I would say that the one thing I have found very effective in other countries, especially across Europe, where there has been an argument against it, has been the use of evidence-based advocacy. And what does that look like in African countries or in countries like Nigeria? I think the jury might still be out, but the evidence is right there at our fingertips when we look at the impact of GMO foods on health, on livelihoods, but beyond that, also on our food sovereignty as nations or as countries. In my keynote address, I had spoken to the issue of food sovereignty touching three things: the land, seed, and food itself. And for me, those are the three key intersecting areas where I see GMO food as being influential in affecting negatively our food sovereignty, especially in the issue of seeds and the ability to be able to regenerate those foods. And so how do we start? We start by looking for the evidence. We start by putting the evidence before those who matter. We start by education from the ground. But evidence alone and advocacy alone doesn't respond. There's an aspect of accountability. And in being conscious citizens, sometimes we don't wait for the answers to drop from the state, because the state is not necessarily always keen to do what they ought to do without the push from citizens. In being conscious citizens, there are various mechanisms that we can use, including the courts, to make sure that the state does what it needs to do, what it is constitutionally obliged to do to protect the well-being and the health of its people. So advocacy and accountability based in evidence will be my response. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Funmi. I mean, when it comes to advocacy, I really believe in building people's accountability, because that we are empowering them, you're giving them a voice, and they are also able to influence the changes that they want to see. So thank you so much for that. And with that, it comes to an end to the panel. Thank you so much to all our esteemed panelists. I mean, this has really been a thought-provoking discussion, and I think there's really a lot to unpack with all of this. So I'm personally going to go back to rewatch this, and we'll also be able to share the video with everyone that attended and that registered. Thank you all so much, and I'll hand over to Christina and Andy.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been a lot. There's so much to unpack. My head is reeling. My notepads are full. And like Christy said, we're coming back to this video. Without wasting any more time, can we, Kim, are you ready with the poll? Just a brief poll, and then we call it a day. Now, if you're not familiar with Mentimeter, if you're using a device or your laptop, go to mentimeter.com and use the code there, 45338149, to enter the poll. If not, you can scan the barcode that's on the screen and see if you can get access to it. Mentimeter.com. Oh, sorry, menti.com, menti.com. And then you use the code there to log into the poll, 45338149. Can someone drop the instructions in the chat room? Kim, next slide, please. Menti.com, use the code 45338149 to log into the poll, and then answer the question we have there. In 1 or 2 words, what action would you take after this webinar to improve food diversity and safety? Let's keep the responses coming in, please. Kim, can you see any responses on your end? I see only one response here.
Oh yes, I'm getting multiple response. I have about 7 right now.
Okay, we'll set the timer at about 50 seconds so that we can wrap this up. Keep them coming in 1 or 2 words based on what you have heard. What action would you take after this webinar to improve food diversity and safety? Okay, Kim, you can take us back to the main screen so we can wrap this up. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who has stayed on the call. We really appreciate you being a part of this. A special thank you to the team from ICHD and Dr. Boy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for collaborating with us on this. And to the Cognito team, you guys are excellent at what you do. I wish you all the best as you continue with your day and the rest of the week. Before we leave, can we, if you can you all turn on your camera, say goodbye, wave so we can get a group shot of everybody that is here. This is our tradition to do. Kim, are you ready for us? Yeah. Awesome. Nice to see the faces. Just a few more. And Kim, let us know when you have it. Okay, we still have a few people coming on. And while we're waiting, I also want to say a big thank you to all the speakers. You guys made this awesome. I tell you, I'm sure everybody's head is steaming because we have a lot to go and think about, especially looking at it from our context in Nigeria. There's so much to unpack from this. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you and we look forward to collaborating with you again very soon and as we continue in this sector. Thank you so much. All right, Kim. Ready?
All right, let me see your happy faces. Smile. Good. 1, 2, go. We're good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. Have a lovely morning. Have a lovely night. See you again very soon. God bless you.
All right, everyone.